Okay, so today on the show, we've got a really special guest. I'm sitting here today with Gyasi. Gyasi is a software engineer, primarily front-end web development, and he also runs a YouTube channel that I highly, highly recommend you guys check out. And maybe you can tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. This is actually my first time being on a podcast, so this is really cool. I'm really excited. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experiences. But I'm a front end dev. I have experience in full stack development. That's most of my experience. I interned for 3 summers at a company called Highland Software, based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a enterprise content management company. Um, but it always has had like a startup type feel because it's only about like 20 something years old. So they have like kind of like a startup kind of culture. So I had a lot of experiences, worked on some really cool projects. And then before that, or during those internships, I majored in computer science at Ohio University. I graduated with a computer science degree in 2018. So now I'm working as a front end dev at another company and working at Progressive in digital as a front end dev, which has been really cool. It's really, really fast paced. I get thrown on a lot of different projects. You could imagine as big of a company that is. So that's been great. And then I'm making content.
Yeah, yeah, you're making some really great content. Why did you start this YouTube channel, and when did you start it?
Yeah. Actually, when I started my channel, well, actually, we talked a little bit earlier about one of my friends that lives in Seattle. His name's Justin. He's actually the one that inspired me to become a YouTuber. I never really thought about YouTube as like an actual like career or like even side hustle or like actual like lifestyle channels. I only went to YouTube for like sports highlights when I was playing football, or like Khan Academy, and like learning how to program for the most part. But then I started my YouTube channel. He inspired me when we interned together at Highland. So I decided to start a channel in 2017. And my channel was just mostly about like my life, really, and just like random things here and there. I was trying to get a grasp on what actually inspired me, because I never was like someone who had a camera in their hand. So I didn't know really anything about videography or photography. But fast forward to 2018, the summer of 2018, I did a day in the life of a software engineer video, and it exploded. Like my channel, when I graduated college, I had like 400 subscribers, and that was literally like 2 years and a month ago. And now I'm at over like 41 or 42,000, which has been a huge blessing. It's been great. But really, that video took off. And before that video, I actually did a day in the life of a computer science major, and that video did well. So I got kind of a grasp on like what niche I should probably pursue, because YouTube is so
Right.
saturated. Um, yeah, and then those videos took off, specifically a day in a life, and people come to me for software stuff now. So
That's awesome.
that's the start. Thanks.
I love that you did a day in the life of a software developer, and then when people responded to it, you decided to make content that was helping them, as opposed to just reflecting it. Like, because you probably could have continued to do episodes like that,
Mhm.
but instead you were like, I can use this audience to help people that were struggling. Is there a reason that you did that? Did you maybe have
Yeah.
some struggles in university?
So I definitely did have struggles in university. But before we get to that, I got really inspired by really 3 channels, which was Mayuko. She's a phenomenal software engineer and YouTuber. Jarvis Johnson and Life of Luba. I was watching those 3, who live in the Bay Area and work in Silicon Valley, and that really inspired me because I was like, they had a lot of different like videos that I could relate to, and then I figured, hey, I can make videos as well, especially since I was literally fresh out of school. I thought it would be a good time. And yeah, I definitely did. Computer science was really hard. I have a video about like how I almost quit. And that happened like early in my like curriculum, because it was new. I had a really tough professor that went to Stanford as my first professor. So
Oh,
being exposed to that for the first time, it was really, really tough. I actually had to withdraw that class. It's a really funny story. And I had to take like coastal kayaking to get enough credits to keep my scholarship. Because I withdrew from that class because I didn't want to get a bad grade, freshman year, second semester. So yeah, I had a lot of struggles, not only with computer science, but just like applying to internships. You know what I mean? Or like big tech companies. I've done so many interviews with I've done interviews with Amazon and Google and Facebook and Pinterest. And so Jarvis Johnson had a video about like every software engineering interview ever. I thought that was really funny, and that kind of inspired me with the 5 things I wish I knew before studying computer science, where I kind of had like a skit because it's so relatable, coding interviews and just being a dev. There's a culture behind it.
Yeah, it's like you don't realize how much of your experiences are shared amongst other people until somebody kind of puts it in a video, and you're like, "Oh, that happens to me all the time."
Yeah. You just laugh and makes you smile because as the dev and like the software engineering community, we have like our own experiences when it comes to like the challenges of undergrad, which is undergrad is really tough unless you already have like experience where you're just like a genius. And then like what companies expect of us, like interview wise, like most people, they interview for a job, right? They may look up the company, go over their resume, and then they go into the interview and they get asked questions about their experience, like the STAR method. But as a software engineer, you want to work for like a major tech company, you're probably going to be getting a coding challenge before they even give you a call.
Yeah.
So yeah,
definitely. And yeah, it's crazy. Like all those experiences are just really shared, and it also kind of sucks a lot because, like you said, computer science graduate or degree can be really difficult. I remember there were specifically a few times where I was out with friends and I got a mark on my phone and I looked at it and it would be like 30%, and I was like, oh, I just don't want to be here anymore. And I would just go home. It's like I don't want to even be out with friends, because it would take so much out of you. And then on top of that, on top of your difficult degree, it's like you have to study full time for interviews. And you've got like you're applying to like a bunch of companies. You get rejected from a bunch of them, which also feels bad. And you finally get the interview, and it's like they're just hammering you with questions. It's like another exam, right?
Yeah, it's exhausting. I mean, I will say we are really like blessed and fortunate in the dev world because we get a lot of perks. Like, granted, it was exhausting. Like I made it to like a final round of interviews when I was like in college with this tech company, and it was an exhausting process, right? Like a 12-hour window to like finish this coding challenge, and then a phone coding challenge, and then they fly you out to San Francisco. But the nice thing is when you like get the opportunity to make it to like the on-site, you get treated really nice. Like you get free food, you get a really nice plane ticket, you get a chance to stay in a really freaking nice hotel. And there aren't too many other like majors that get that opportunity. Cause like I got my degree was my curriculum or my degree is inside an engineering department. So we were like integrated with mechanical, civil, electrical engineers all the time, chemical engineers. And the way we were treated as like software engineers is just very, very different. So it is a challenge, but it's totally worth it, which is why I like to make these videos, because so many students are like, oh, I just want to give up. I'm like, look, it's better to get that, 2 point something passing whatever you get in a computer science degree, opposed to like doing something that isn't as difficult, or is as lucrative, doesn't have as many opportunities, and getting like really good grades, because a lot of companies just need talent. And if you're just not set on working for like a major tech company and you just like want to get this degree and get a nice job, that will more than likely happen.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Like you took the words right out of my mouth there. I was basically on the point of that. It's so lucrative once you get through it, and you just have to push through it. And then it's like really great after that. Right. So we all know it's difficult. We both went through it, but it's just a matter of pushing through. And then that's why we kind of generate content to support people to get through it. Because once you're on the other side, you look back and you go, oh, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. Oh, it was so worth it. Like now that I look back at it, I wouldn't. It's funny because when you get a comp sci degree in like engineering college, and like specifically the accredited ones, and the reason why I say accredited is because they make you do more. So like I had to take a lot of math and a lot of science, and it was such a pain back then. I didn't have any really cool electives. I remember wanting to do like iOS software engineering, and they just didn't have that as an option at my university. So really, the only options were like databases, artificial intelligence, data mining, like bioinformatics. And I remember it was such a pain, like some of the things that we were doing, like greedy algorithms and like random forests. It was nuts. When I look back at it, I'm like, man, I learned so much. You don't, as a computer science major, you don't have to become a developer. Like you could go into you get like your master's degree or PhD. You could go into study. You could become you could do machine learning, data science,
Yeah.
consulting, analytics, and that's because the curriculum like puts you through so much. And I remember my professors told me that like our job isn't to make you a software engineer. Our job is to make you computer scientists. And
Right.
that really resonates with me now when I look back at it. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't change a thing because I learned so much. Um, and if I want to pursue another career that's like within tech, embedded systems or whatever, something else, like I could because of the experiences that, we've got in college.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really also resonate with that thing you said there about how, that their job is to make you a computer scientist. Because I remember I had that aha moment also in university. My teacher said something similar. What he said was, I'm a computer scientist and I hate computers. That's what he said. And I was like, wait, what? But then when you think about it, you're right. Like he taught algorithms, right? So
Oh,
what
yeah.
he does is kind of discuss big O of n notation and
Yeah.
like running through algorithms like that. So he is a computer scientist and he doesn't
Right.
like computers. He doesn't even use them very much, right?
Right. Right. Because there's because computer science, I think computer science like came from like mathematics.
Right.
So it's in a lot of mathematical like departments. And that's a funny story too, because I didn't know what major I wanted to pursue when I came out of high school because I didn't watch like people on YouTube. I just like really applied to like different engineering majors at different colleges. When I look back at it, I'm like, man, there are universities I could have applied to that didn't have an engineering department but had a computer science department, and larger cities where I probably could have had even more opportunities because I went to a school like in like rural Ohio.
Right.
Luckily, it was big enough to get like a lot of companies there. However, I did see the benefits students received when they went to universities and study computer science within a really nice city. So like one way to land that like dream job or at least get a good job in a really really cool city is to try to attend a university within the city you want to live in, because those recruiters and like hiring managers are more likely to hire you. They want to hire you because they want to keep the talent within the city, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I see that all the time. There's, University of Washington right here. I
Okay.
know that we have a lot of stuff going on at Microsoft and
Hmm.
Amazon's next door too, right? So there's definitely a
Right.
bunch of recruitment that happens right there.
Yeah, because when you're like applying on LinkedIn or Indeed, sometimes it's just like a resume stack, and I've had way more success being able to like explain my experience to a recruiter opposed to them scanning a resume that kind of has to be templated perfectly for them to even respond. I remember even being in an interview where someone asked me, would I be able to adapt to like the culture in like New York City, or like not culture, the lifestyle, because it's so different from really everywhere else in America. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, I never thought about that. I was like, yeah, no, definitely, because New York is really cool. I'd love to live there one day. But I'm like, man, I wonder if like that might have played a role. Like, what if me and someone else were like at the top, one of the top candidates, but that person lived in New York City. You don't have to worry about them adapting to the lifestyle, so they choose them.
Right. That's actually a really good point. I'd never considered that. I actually have a funny story about that. So I I interviewed for a place in New York too, and I got the exact same question. I don't know. Have you ever watched The Office?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Multiple times through.
Yeah, same here, right? So, in the first few seasons, when Jim applies to this job in New York, he
Yeah.
goes for an interview and he gets asked that question in the interview. And what his answer is like, oh, there's like an energy to the city or whatever. I remember being asked the question. I gave them the same
That's so
answer.
funny. It really is, though. It's a really, really cool place. It's interesting because there's a lot of tech out there because everyone thinks about like Silicon Valley, but the Bay Area, really the Bay Area and where you live in Seattle, but New York has a lot of really cool things and all the big companies are there too.
Definitely, definitely. I'm hoping to go to New York at some point also.
Yeah.
So let's go to your experiences. So
Yeah.
you did talk about your internships, but let's go through a little bit more and talk about like what you
Mhm.
did and what stacks you worked on.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I first started interning, I got my first internship when I was a freshman. So it was right after freshman year, and I didn't have much programming experience. So I wasn't in the best like I won't say headspace, but basically what happened was I withdrew from that intro to computer science class, right? And I knew nothing about industry, and I didn't know that a lot of companies could care less like about how well you're doing in school once they hire you. It's so weird. So what happened
Yeah.
was I remember I withdrew from that class. It's so funny thinking about this. I called like I called like my manager or recruiter and was like, oh my goodness, I withdrew from my intro to computer science class. Like, do you all still want me to work for you? When I look back at that, that's so funny because a lot of people that are in within software development aren't even like they didn't even get computer science majors.
Yeah.
It's both, and one thing I like alluded to before in a video is that most of the computer science majors are usually like the younger pool of employees because it's hard to like jump right into software development without experience with working. Whereas like if you worked at a company or at other companies and then learn how to code, you have experience, right? Um, but yeah, so I started the internship and I remember like wanting to switch majors. I wanted to switch to industrial systems engineering because I figured I could work like as a consultant. Because there are people that went to Ohio State that worked at Highland that were industrial systems engineers that worked at consultants. But then I actually shadowed consulting and in project management, and I was so bored. I remember I literally, because there are like bikes to get to different buildings, like on like my break during shadowing, I would like literally go grab my laptop and I would go like work on like the project I was working on. So that first year I was exposed to C sharp, WPF with C sharp. So I did a lot of front end development. Sounds weird to say front end development with WPF, but basically like WPF is like the XAML language. Um, it kind of looks like HTML for those who are listening and aren't familiar with it. But it's a way to bind like a view to a model within C sharp. So I had experience. So I experienced that, and that was really hard because was like C sharp is kind of complex, and I didn't have the most confidence because I withdrew from that course, right? But to make a long story short, I got exposed to front end development, and I sat in a pod with other interns. So they were really nice. They were really helpful. They were all older than me. One works, I think, at Uber now. That was actually my mentor. She was really nice. She helped me out a lot. And they were like explaining like concepts to me and helping me with like, logic that I didn't understand. But I mostly focused on front end because I didn't have that much experience. So then like this light bulb went off. I was like, wait a second. Front end development is like a thing. Like I can just continue this computer science major and then I can become a front end developer like when I graduate from college. Like, and I don't have to deal with like data structures, algorithms, right? I don't have to worry about, binary trees. But you don't do a lot of that anyways. A lot of those things, fundamentals you do in school is just to understand what's going on underneath the hood. And when I
Right.
started to understand that, I was like, okay, I can just get through this major. I got experience. I'll stick with it. So then the next summer, I did more or less the same thing. But since I had more experience, I did more back end development. So I started working like on the server side of things, and I worked with another intern. It was a team of two. Um, and my internships gave me really good experience because they were really fun. Highland's like a great place to work. It's always like in the top 100 on Forbes list, and like top 5 here in Cleveland. They call it the Google of Cleveland. Um, the motto is like what they make isn't fun, but working there is fun. There's like slides and video games. We played basketball. So literally I played basketball. We would play like knockout. We had a group of like 20, 25 interns that would play knockout. We'd hang out. It was really, really fun. Amazing experience. So yeah, I got exposure to C# and I worked in like a real dev team, right? So I worked like with I didn't work with a scrum master, but we worked in agile, right, for our project management to keep track of our stories and have some transparency with our product owner stakeholders. And then we had like quality assurance testers as well. So you got like you got real experience. Only difference is you weren't working in production code, right? Um, so that the second summer was great because I worked with a really great product owner that acted as if he was talking with customers and saying, hey, this is what they needed. So the first project that first summer was like an educational project, even though I worked in healthcare. No idea why. But the company was a lot smaller then, so a lot of times, you could work on different things. Then the second year, I actually worked on a healthcare product for quality assurance testers to fetch some documents. Not really fun, but one thing that Highland did, which was great, was they knew the product wasn't fun, business to business, but you get exposed to cutting edge technology, which is great. There's no, oh, we do it this way. It's no, what do you think we should do? What programming language should we use? What framework should we use? Okay, why should we use that? And that gives you feel like you're actually influencing the project, like what you say matters, and that's so important as a developer, like to actually have input into like what you're developing. And then fast forward to the last summer, actually was like an intern team lead with 2 other interns that I like mentored and led. And that was a really fun experience because I got exposed to web development. And we created this web accessibility tool that scanned other websites to determine if they comply with WCAG standards, accessibility standards for people who are visually impaired. That was really fun. And I fell in love with web, and I've been doing web ever since then. That was the summer of 2017. So that was my last internship.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. I there's so much in that journey there that I love about it. I love how you kind of found your footing and found what you liked in front end development, and realized that even though you didn't like everything about computer science, it's still the degree and the career choice for you. And I guess what my question coming out of that would be is, if I'm like a student, how do I know what type of technology is going to get me excited to come to work every day? Like, you found your footing in front end, right?
Yeah, I got really lucky because I worked at a company that the culture was amazing, right? Everyone was willing to help. You worked on really cool projects. Like, even if the end solution isn't fun, the way you built it was fun. And also I was able to like have research time. Like, okay, I like front end development, so let me build a website portfolio. So the best way to figure out like what stack you're interested in or what programming language you're interested in is really like try to get an internship in software engineering. And the title will be like software developer or software engineer, which basically means you're going to be working like full stack more than likely. And if you experience full stack, you'll get a better understanding of how to build a solution from end to end, and you'll also experience what part of the stack you enjoy the most. So you'll be able to figure it out. That's how I was able to figure out, oh, you know what? I don't want to do full stack development. Let me focus on front end development. Or, sometimes I do like doing full stack development. It really depends on what what product you're working on or what team you're working on, and when it comes to internships. But then on the side, I would say try to work on personal projects, right? So like if you're interested in full stack development, then try to build a like functional website that actually has some like user interaction, like even if it's a simple form, to understand like data structures and objects and how they relate to or how they bind to the data and how you can save user data. Basically create, read, update, delete. Do those tutorials. Those will help you figure out like if you really like building a whole solution, or if you really want to focus on, the selling of a website or application.
Right. Okay. So what other advice do you have for students right now?
Yeah. My advice is to figure out what industry you're interested in pursuing. Sometimes we focus so much on the language, the programming language, we don't think about actually building a portfolio that relates to the type of jobs you want to pursue. So let's say you're really interested in the financial sector. What I would do is I would actually look up the programming languages that these financial companies like, Chase Bank, Citibank, any of these banks, Goldman Sachs, or investment banks, fintech, all those things, blockchain, if you're interested in any of those things, figure out what programming languages those jobs require as a basic qualification, become really good at it, and then start building a portfolio that can relate to that industry. So if you're really interested in the financial sector, then build like a really, really nice, like immersive calculator app, or experience that you can actually put like in the little URL that says, hey, you have any URLs you want to link to? Like you can create an application, right? A simple application, right? Like a calculator or a currency converter, and do it and create it in a language that these specific companies are looking for. And that way you can actually show, hey, I already built this. I know this language. I'm ready. So then they'll be more inclined to interview you, because I will say there are a lot of tech jobs, but they're really competitive. So you want to separate yourself. And a lot of times, I know I'm being a little biased because I'm a front end dev, but one way to separate yourself is through visuals. So like through a personal portfolio that maybe you design through Squarespace or you build yourself. That's how you can really separate yourself, so you can catch the eye of the recruiter or the hiring manager.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny that you said currency converter, because that was one of my projects when I was in school. So I definitely made one of those. But I also made like really horrible UI. So like you said, if you're going to do it right, make a nice UI. And if you're going to like include the GitHub or something,
definitely I was just about to get to that. Yeah.
Right. But like definitely include a screenshot if you don't expect people to be like pulling your code and then running it,
Right.
I see that a lot with, it's just a GitHub with a README that's like, oh, this is how you install it. And I'm like, am I really going to install this project just to see what it looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. Like GitHub is great. Like you actually really need that. I can't believe I forgot that. But GitHub is really, really valuable, because then you can also show them that you understand version control, which is a skill set, another skill set you need as a dev, not just programming, but actual version control. But yeah, the GitHub is great. And like when you build that application, even if it's simple, you can make it more complex, right? So like for the currency converter, if you're new to programming, you can actually like look up the equations for the currency conversions, right? And you can hard code it for the most part, right? But if you have more experience and you want to do full stack development or just web development in general, then my recommendation is understand how Node.js works, right? Like understand how to launch like a local server. Then you can like create a file that's like have like a JSON file with like this data. And with Node.js is really nice because you can launch like a local server. You don't have to like actually ping anything externally. But then that's the next step. Like if you understand how to do that, then actually ping an API and try to like subscribe to that data and then populate it. And then if you can populate the data in a really appealing way, that's gold, because not only you can build the whole solution, like you understand the back end, but you also can build a really nice, like immersive experience.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. All right, so I don't want to take up too much of your time here. I really appreciate you joining us today. So, is there any last tips that you have for students before we get going here?
Yeah, I'd say don't focus too much on your GPA. I know that's hard to believe because, like, as a comp sci major, you may have like a lower degree than like some of your friends in other majors. So you get a little bit disappointed maybe in your grades, but understand how difficult your curriculum is and understand that it's just as viable, if not more viable, to actually have personal projects because anyone can regurgitate information from a professor, but these companies actually need creative, they need people who are creative that can actually like solve problems that haven't been solved before. So, and then if you do have internship experiences, you don't even have to put your GPA on your resume. I stopped putting my GPA on my resume like after my first year, and it never came up. So don't let school beat you up. Keep pursuing. Like my grandpa says, keep on keeping on. So keep on keeping on and keep being like creative, like pursue that creative route.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Jossie.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.